Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our monthly morning coffee chat, the latest innovation in data security. Thank you for starting your day with us. My name is Kristen, and I'm on the marketing team here at Aqueduct. I just wanted to note that today's call is being recorded. We want to keep today's chat interactive, so if at any point you'd like to ask a question, please type it in the chat or the QA box, and we'll make sure to get that answered. Without further ado, Rick, the floor is yours if you'd like to introduce yourself and your co-host for today.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. I'm so excited you guys are joining us on another edition of the Coffee Chat. We have these monthly, and every month we talk about different topics that are affecting you as our customers and folks and what's going on in the industry. And so I'm Rick Beaupre, and thanks for joining. And then this month I am joined by Carlos, who I consider a subject matter expert in today's topic, data security. Carlos, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Rick. It's great to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. You've been on the forefront of data security for quite a while. Can you give folks a little bit of your background in data security? It's quite impressive.
Sure. So, I actually got my start in IT in the late 1900s, as I like to say, for the kids, at a research university in Boston, Massachusetts. So I spent about a decade there, really focusing on data center technologies, everything, from help desk, laptops, desktops, what we now call endpoints, was all under my purview. Data protection, backup, disaster recovery, all things that I was essentially responsible for. The things that I weren't necessarily directly responsible for, in fact, were networking and security. However, it was always top of mind. How do we secure the data that's within the data center? So that's I have some tidbits on that, and we can talk more about that in a bit.
Yeah, that sounds great. All right, first things first before we jump into it. It is coffee chat, so I always start, with a coffee. Today, doing a flat white. It's single source. I think it's Guatemalan coffee this month. You're not a coffee drinker though. You're a tea drinker. What's your favorite in the morning to start with?
That's right. For me, I generally, stick with the English breakfast or an Earl Grey. That's my drink of choice most mornings. I'm not much of a coffee drinker. I will drink it occasionally just to see what it tastes like because it's been a while. But
Yeah.
for me, tea is my tea of drink.
Yeah, it is. It is. But I do drink a lot of coffee, so it is bad. You can get carried away with it.
Sure.
All right, let's kind of jump right into it. And you have a background that you talked about, have been in for a long time, but I noticed, data security has evolved over the last decade, and today there's a lot going on with growing attack surface, cloud complexities, all kinds of stuff. What do you see the biggest challenge that companies are facing today in that?
Yeah, so it's interesting you talk about the evolution. Again, going back to my days in IT, what we cared about from a security standpoint was the perimeter. We thought
Mhm.
about the firewall. What is it protecting us from the outside? We really weren't thinking about threats from within. And now today, with the evolution of users working remotely and the advent of cloud technologies, and data living in the cloud, now data is everywhere. So we need a better way to protect ourselves from, essentially getting hacked in some cases or having data leaked and things of that nature. So the evolution is quite dramatic, I would say, based on the past 20 years. What we're looking at today is a more challenging environment to protect because again, in the past, all our data was centralized in one location within our data center. We worried about protecting the perimeter, but now that our data is everywhere, we're needing to invest in potential tools and some education for a lot of our users in terms of making sure that the data stays intact.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, and I was made me think of something. I was on a meeting a couple weeks ago, and one of the stakeholders asked me, hey, Rick, where are companies falling short when it comes to data security today? And the first thing that popped into my head is, where is your data? Or do you know where all your data is? And that's where a lot of companies fall short, right? Like your data is everywhere and you don't even know sometimes where the data is. Folks that are moving on-prem to SaaS, and either in all these SaaS app sprawls, how do you contain that data? How do you control that data from a security point when you're in all of these different SaaS apps? It's really challenging for folks to try to wrap their arms around it.
Yeah, I would say the biggest challenge is understanding where your data is and where's the sensitive data, where's the most critical data.
Right.
Because a lot of cases, people don't know, what they're putting, where they're putting their data, and sometimes it maintains stuff that shouldn't get out there. In a lot of cases, so that is absolutely one of the biggest challenges I see. Just visibility of, okay, where is your data? Again, going to the point where asking customers, do you know where your data lives?
Yeah.
A lot of times people don't have a full grasp of that.
Yeah, and you'll hear the term, yeah, mostly I know where it is, it's not always defined. And for a long time, I mean, when everything was on-prem and we had data classification and we had, where we can control data, we've always had, as long as I can remember, the PII or PCI or, health information from HIPAA, all of that stuff, right? From an on-prem, you could kind of control it as best we could. And then we move things out to cloud, and more so, the next evolution is into the SaaS apps. That becomes a lot harder to classify that data and understand where your sensitive data is. And then you add the AI component to it, right? And then you got people moving sensitive data into AI, and now you've lost kind of, I don't want to say lost control, but you've lost, where that data is.
Yep, absolutely. I think AI is proven to be quite an interesting technology. People are leveraging it for good, and people are leveraging it for bad. Bad actors out there. So I think with the power of AI, we can probably do a lot of good in terms of getting reins on all the data that people have. Data classification is one of the things that comes to mind in terms of today it's, well, for the most part, in the past, it's been a manual process. People have needed to, with processes, restrict data or restrict use of their data and put it in certain locations and locales and things of that nature. And today, because data, it's expansive. I was thinking, when you asked me to come up on this talk, it's like, how old is what is the oldest amount of data that you have? And I can remember that, I'm a hoarder when it comes to data. So I have data that I wrote in college. I still have it on Synology drives at home today. I remember some Fortran code that I wrote. It's still out there. I just don't want to delete it. And that's, organizations are no different. Institutions that, are, they want to mine their data today. They don't want to delete anything. So it's become ever more important that, they secure it in the most appropriate way.
Yeah, and this is a topic for another episode, but data governance now becomes so much harder when you have all of that data that you're holding on to, right? And then, like, where is that in your data governance pile? And then now data privacy is going to add on to that as well. And you get to see like it's just a snowball, right? And that eventually turns into to an avalanche. I feel, in this world that we're having today, the data security posture manager, DSPM, is really becoming prevalent for, like you were saying, the AI to quickly get our data under control, get our data to where we can classify it, even if we're using the four basics. That's always, folks, you've seen this, people overcomplicate data classification. Just do the four main things, right? Public, non-public, restricted, and confidential, right? It just says it's it, and move on. But really, DSPM can really understand where that sensitive data lives, get a good handle around, where you're going to go, and then help build your program from there, right? It's a good foundation for us. And then from there, you can do zero trust. You can do whatever you need to do from a compliance or architect perspective, from that.
Yeah, no, DSPM, I would say, is certainly top of mind today, especially for organizations, just because data is out there. Data is, essentially everywhere for a lot of organizations. And understanding where the sensitive data lives, who has access to it, what are the permissions, those sorts of things are, again, in the past, people would just set it and forget it. Here is a file share. Here are the permissions. Really don't review it on a regular basis. Having DSPM in an environment helps people stay up to date in real time as to what's going on in the environment. So if an employee is let go or someone has moved on, you want to make sure that their access is essentially, revoked in some cases in that regard, or just making it aware, raising a flag, hey, this user is moving some data, or this data, is sensitive, and there's 3 people that have access to it, and it should only be 2 or 1, that sort of thing. So I think real time, because again, hacks are happening in real time. It's not like you can wait, or you can prevent it just based on time, but as attacks are coming in and users are making changes and things of that nature, you need something like a DSPM to sort of give you a good understanding of what's going on with the live data.
Yeah, and this is a good time to remind folks it's not the hackers that are coming in like the traditional with the firewalls and everything. It's really folks that are stealing identities, stealing, or doing man in the middle with MFA, really a social engineering aspect of it and getting inside and wandering around. And now let's, flip with AI added on to data security in the sense of if all of a sudden a persona is accessing, sensitive data for the C-suite or some other intellectual property, now the system will alert you that, hey, that's not a normal behavior. This person's never gone this way, and you really need to put some eyes on this to get this under control. In real time, right? So you're not getting the alert the next morning, all the data's gone, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that brings us to AI powered security enhancements, right? You said it earlier, AI is really changing, the way that we're doing data security. There's some good, some bad, right? Some folks are relying on it too much, and that's the same thing, that we've had in the past, right? We call it, that black box problem. You just pop in, hey, I got a new AI tool. I'm not gonna have to worry about it anymore. And then, that's not helpful at all. you know, what do you see in your world for AI that's, really standing out to you?
Yeah, so I think AI's power in real-time threat detection is huge,
Yep.
because just due to the fact that you can't do it manually. In the
Mhm.
past, the way we looked at security was a manual process. We had NOCs, we had people, looking at security, looking at logs, those sorts of things. Now it's just the data. There's just too much data. There's just too much attack surfaces. You need, I would say, in a lot of cases, the power of AI for the real-time threat detections. It's a new world. So
Yeah.
let's leverage AI for good. And again, get ahead of what these hackers slash, bad actors are trying to get after.
Yeah, and I don't in this coffee chat, you try to stay away from product as much as I can,
Sure.
but you bring up a good point. And I do have to kind of bring up a product because it's the way that it's going about it, and that's Rubrik's Turbo Threat Hunting, right? Think about the way that they changed that with going after the metadata and accelerating it. That that's unique in our industry. That's going to change a lot of things for a lot of folks, right? Because now we can do it, you know, in sub milliseconds, right? Whereas before it was a to understand that was a lot longer, a lot more complicated. So AI in that sense is really just looking at data it already has and looking for, the supplemental changes or some hash changes or, whatever the parameters are that we're setting up from there. So um, I think it's exciting to be in this space right now because of the changes that are happening. But I think also from the stewardship of folks that are really trying to get ahead and really, protect the data. I've been saying that for years. For me, it's all about identity and data. Those are the two things you have to worry about. Network, how they get there. Of course, it has to be secured. Devices have to be secured. Apps have to be secured and whitelisted. But those are the two ends of the pillars, right? The identity and the data. And if you can control both of those, I think you have a good handle on, your environment.
Yep. Yeah, I think I think that almost lends itself to another topic point, which is zero trust. When you talk about identity, it's in the past, we trusted everything, or we trusted but verified. Today, based on the nature of the environments, we should trust in nothing, essentially. And identity is one of those things. We inherently trust the identity. If a user is coming in and they've got the credentials, they've got the two-factor authentication in some cases, we should trust them, and we should let them have access to whatever it is that they should have access to. That's a paradigm shift for a lot of people. I would say even me, a legacy IT person who's been in the industry for a couple of decades now. The way we secured, the way we thought about how individuals or how things would get breached has completely changed. So again, I think a zero trust data architecture or infrastructure is what we should all be striving for.
Yeah, totally agree with that. And I've had a lot, especially the last 2 years. You've seen me, like, even in my designs.
Yep.
Zero trust, it got a bad name to start. Everybody's like, it's so hard to do. And it's really not if you just do those two pillars and then work your way in, right? If you take care of those two things, you can work your way in. And I think it got a bad rap for, a really long time, from that. But back to your zero trust story, when we talk about data and data security, think about how close we've been working, because of the technologies, right? When we look at data services where, a box can go into safe mode, or, we can isolate the data, or we're looking at ransomware, all of these storage companies that have added all of that security component, all of that AI component natively 3 years ago was never heard of, right? And now all of these storage and backup folks are security focused first, right? From that, and it tells a more complete story. And I think, as a practitioner, I think that's amazing, right? Because like you said, we keep telling it, we have to we're protecting identity and data. And now that we have these tools for us, there's so much we can do. And again, all our customers or folks that are listening, it's all based on your use case, but we can come at it so many different ways to protect that data, to isolate it, to make it immutable, to do all these different things based on the particular data that you need. And, to me, it's awesome.
Yes, something I heard is, security is job zero. And what's interesting about these, data storage companies is that they've enhanced their technologies. It's not good enough just to store data anymore and have users retrieve that data. You now need to protect it in a more, let's say, a cyber resilient way. You need to think about the bad actors and what they're going to potentially do to the data. It's no longer, Susie or Mary or Joe who accidentally deleted an Excel spreadsheet. It's now, you've got someone who's, essentially infected your environment with ransomware and has encrypted all the files. So now these, storage vendors are seriously looking at, well, what can we do to protect companies against that threat? And again, AI for, threat detection and things of that nature, but as well as, having the safeguards in their technology such that they can roll back or give you the ability to retrieve that data if an incident were to occur. So that's pretty exciting, I guess. Back in the day, I used to say, because again, having been in IT, storage was storage. It was dull, boring, mundane. But today, it's not so, it's more interesting than it was, just due to the fact that you're now thinking of ways and architecting solutions in a way that protects people from, potentially the inevitable in a lot of cases. They used to say, if you get hit, now it's when you're going to get hit.
And again, I know this is said a lot, but I live kind of by this mantra, right? They only have to get it right once. We have to get it right all the time. Yeah. And to me, I take that very serious. You brought up a good point. You made me think of something in Architect, and you and I talk about this a lot, and that is encryption. And before it was like you'd encrypt certain data, you wouldn't encrypt. And now encryption is very important because at that basic level, even if you use a basic encryption, at least slows it down a little, right? And now we're talking about, encryption in transit, encryption at rest, and over time, our encryption protocols are going to get more robust because of quantum computing and AI, right? I mean, that's the dark side of AI, right? The way that it could, come after our encryption keys and stuff like that. But back to, I just think having an encryption um, story and understand what you're trying to do with that at the basic level is very, very important in data.
Yeah. I mean, going back in time, when I was in IT, encryption was a negative word. It's like, if we encrypt, it's going to slow our ability to do stuff. And, people have probably had that, they still have that mentality today. If we encrypt stuff, it's going to be problematic. It's going to slow down traffic. It's an extra step, some things that we need to do. But the technology is much more pervasive now in terms of how we get things done. At a minimum, people should be, encrypting data at rest. A lot of these storage manufacturers have encryption at rest by default. The next layer up is essentially, data in transit. So end-to-end encryption, TLS encryption of the data in flight. Most companies do not, I would say, encrypt their data at flight. Because again, the belief is if it's within my own four walls, what do I have to really worry about? But that goes back to the zero trust. We need to start thinking at a higher level. We need to start thinking at, that, these predicaments can potentially be avoided if we start looking at, better ways to protect the data. I would say I was not a fan of encryption 20 years ago, but today it's, we live and die by it just due to the fact of our nature of our jobs and remote work and how we're connecting and the pervasiveness of cloud technologies, SaaS technologies, our data, and even this video transmission is, being broadcasted.
I was the guy, people see me come on, oh my God, here he comes. He's going to talk about encryption again. He's going to talk about security. Like, Jesus, just get away from me. Right? Yeah. And you bring up a good point too about data and all that. And I just remind folks on the shared responsibility model, right? So when we're talking cloud, that data is yours. You're responsible for it. If you lose it, AWS, Google, Azure, they don't care. That's up to you. That's on to you. SaaS apps as well too. I was talking to a customer a short time ago, and we were talking about data and backing it up and understanding and encrypting. And they're like, wait, doesn't XYZ vendor? No, that data is yours. They're responsible for the infrastructure around the data, but the data is you. And I think there's a misconception out there that the data in these, cloud or SaaS tools is, protected, and it's not, and I think that's one of the shortcomings of it, right?
Yeah, redundant hardware, this is what they're offering. The SaaS and the cloud, they're offering redundant hardware. They're not redundant. They're not offering redundant data protection for your data. You come in, you start, if it's email as an example, you're storing email, you're creating emails. It's not their responsibility to protect your emails, your intellectual property. So again, a lot of people don't recognize that. And, these are discussions I'm having with customers on a regular basis. So if we just put it in the cloud, it's protected, right?
Yeah.
Wrong.
Yeah.
Wrong.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what that really means.
Yeah. Again, it's just where it lives, right? It's the same security and architect story, whether it's on-prem, in the cloud, in SaaS, or wherever, or all three, right? And it's understanding that, and just sitting down with folks and painting that whole picture. I see a lot of folks just go, I have this product, I have this product, and I have this product, so I'm safe. And it's like none of them talk to each other, and that's, I love what they're trying to do. It's just we have to kind of clean it up. I want to switch gears a little, because this is my favorite part of these chats, and that is what you see on the horizons, the emerging technologies. What is exciting you from a practitioner in the enterprise architect space, and more importantly on data and data security.
Okay. So something that I recently came in, something that I recently started researching was homomorphic encryption. So a lot of users probably don't know, or guests don't know, or individuals listening probably don't know what it is, but it's the ability to process the data while the encryption still remains. So in a lot of cases, data at rest encryption, as an example, when you go to access that data, it's being decrypted by, in most cases, software or a cryptographic chip. But homomorphic would actually be the ability to keep that encrypted so that, a bad actor listening on the wire or, going in wouldn't be able to access that data. So I find that quite interesting. And again, I think it goes to your quantum computing and and things of that nature in the future. But, technology is rapidly changing, and I'm trying to stay ahead of it as much as I possibly can.
Yeah, for me, it's always the evolutions of, I love the DSPM tools. I love, the CSPM tools, the cloud security posture management tool. And now we have, SSPM, right, which is a SaaS security posture management. All of these technologies, those are, to me, I think anytime that we can secure the data, no matter what, is an evolution, right? Those to me are, if we're doing those programs, that's really what I like. And the other thing I would bring up is the way microseg is becoming so easily to do. Before, microseg was such a hard thing to do because you had to manually go in it. And now you have tools like Illumio or GuardiaCore where you can just deploy them, set them up, and in a few short weeks, your segmentation, your zoning is done. Right. And you could separate your data. Those are the kind of technology. And now you add the AI component for good on there. Now you can kind of see, your data and understand what's going on. And to me, I think as a practitioner, if I understand my data, I feel much more in control than when I look at the vastness. It again, to me, it's like looking at an ocean, right? With the data, you're like, oh my God, it's a large ocean. But if I can get that under control and get these into little lakes and all of that, I have a much easier time understanding and controlling what's happening in those.
Yeah, no, I would agree. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
What other technologies, like what's your innovation that's on the horizon that you see that is coming down the pike that you'd like to see more mature or just come out?
Yeah, I think again, the real-time threat detection, it's it's available in some technologies, but not available in all technologies. So if we can make that more pervasive, for me, I think, like you said, zero trust has a bad connotation in some circles and whatnot, but I think that is what's that can be very important for a lot of technologies and organizations to look at. And again, like you mentioned, the two pillars of where to start, identity and data, that's where people should be focusing. Let's not try to bite it all off at once, or try to consume it all at once. But just getting a better insight as to what you have out there. One of the interesting things I found, I have yet to find a single tool that can capture all the data that everyone has, whether it's
Right.
on-prem, in SaaS, or public cloud, private cloud, wherever the data might be. There's no single tool. So users, customers are having to, having to figure out good ways to sort of capture all of that. I think DSPM will play a good part in that. Certainly their focus has been on the cloud areas and whatnot, but looking at, again, the data holistically across different applications, is going to be huge for customers to get insight into their data. And then, of course, why would they want to do that? But to potentially feed AI models, large language models in the future to sort of help drive better business outcomes. So there's not, it's not just a mundane task of getting a handle of this data and making sure it's secure, but potentially leveraging that data for, business insights in the future.
That's awesome. All right. I'm going to shift gears. We're going to get into a quick fire round, I call it.
Okay.
It's some Q&A. We have some questions that have popped up. Really good questions. These are going to be awesome. All right, first question. Where is your data within M365? Is it in OneDrive, SharePoint, network file storage? And let's see, and are you managing your knowledge and adhering to regulations if you have any? That's a good question. So for
Microsoft 365, and that's interesting.
yeah,
Yeah, I've
so for
worked with Microsoft a long time, so I
yeah,
mean,
yeah, fire
so
away on that. No, you fire away on that. I want to hear your opinion on this.
so it's almost the answer is almost yes, in the sense that your data is everywhere.
Yeah,
When you're leveraging Microsoft 365, an attachment gets stored in OneDrive, could get stored in SharePoint, can get stored in Teams, which is also, back-ended by SharePoint. So your data is essentially in a lot of locations within an M365 environment. In fact, when we're helping customers protect their M365 environment, we're essentially protecting it all. We're not just looking at their mailbox, but we're looking at SharePoint and OneDrive because your data is scattered literally throughout. In some cases, it's duplicated, especially if you start saving it locally. It's synchronized with your desktop. That's synchronized to OneDrive, or it's a SharePoint folder for the team to have access to. So your data is everywhere, and having a tool that can classify that data, tell you where it is, who has access to it, is hugely important. Microsoft has been notorious for making it easy for people to leverage their technology, but at the flip side, also making it easy for the data to be shared out of the organization. So, a default setting within a Microsoft 365 tenant is such that you have SharePoint, you have Teams, or you have OneDrive, you can right click and say, let's share this file. And anyone who has access to that link can get access to that file. And that's something that organizations need to sort of rein in. They need to look at their Microsoft 365 tenant. And I know that a lot of customers who, during COVID needed to collaborate better because users were working remotely, they started with Teams and SharePoint sprawl. They just started creating Teams and SharePoint sites to get their data within the organization, spread out to everyone so everyone could continue working in a remote capacity. But now they're potentially suffering the challenge of, risk and data governance and having to rein that in. And those are things we can probably help customers with. So, if someone's listening and you have an issue with Microsoft 365, we've got tools that we can help sort of mitigate a lot of those issues.
yeah, I'm actually in the midst of one of those right now. Same thing. When I smiled when you said SharePoint data sprawl and then the governance, right? And again, that's just a byproduct of the pandemic. Just you had to work from there. And then from a regulation perspective, again, Carlos mentioned it. Any of the DSPM tools, and then once you get the SharePoint and all of that under control, there are tools we can use like Microsoft Purview or different things to plug in to add a compliance requirement on it. Can you speak to market trends of cloud adoption, repatriation efforts, and securing hybrid cloud environments? I actually heard you talking about this the other day. So you want to jump into that one?
Yes, it's interesting. Talking with a lot of customers who say they're cloud first and they want to get out of the data center business. And they start talking about, okay, you know what? We're not going to do a refresh of our technology that's on-prem in our private cloud. We're just going to go straight to Azure, AWS, GCP, whatever it might be. But then they start running their own analyses and looking at the costs and what that looks like. And they say, well, maybe we should consider doing something different. So, I mean, in terms of repatriation, I would say a lot of customers are looking at what the costs of the cloud is. One of the things, I think I've mentioned this before to you, Rick, but, I have a self-proclaimed title of cloud therapist. I like to talk to customers about the cloud and the shock of going there or potentially thinking about going there. There's nothing wrong with the cloud necessarily, but you need to think of it as, either a use case or a lifestyle. If you use it as a use case, it's probably the most expensive way. So if you essentially just lift and shift your infrastructure into the cloud, it's going to cost you a lot of money per month. But if you think about leveraging the cloud for what it's essentially designed for, this, the agility, the scalability, and being able to shrink things, then cloud can work in your favor. So it's just a matter of having those discussions rather than just, making the blanket statement, yeah, we're moving to cloud, or, this doesn't work for us, or this does work for us. It's, again, having discussions, have a discussion with someone, and, consultant about, what you should be doing, and we'll help you get to where you need to be.
Yeah, and I've even seen over the last couple of years, to follow up on that question, is edge services, right? So like an expedient where you're kind of putting stuff on the edge of their, and maybe just having a storage there, so you're not paying that, high volume, that price of the cloud, right? So there's different use cases and different ways to do it. I've had customers that, want to rehydrate back on prem, for whatever reason. It's all based on what your business needs to do and what your users need to do is really going to get you to that final story. I hate to say it, one size doesn't fit all. And that's, the cloud companies want you to think one size fits all. We can adjust, but it really isn't, that story. What are your thoughts on products that monitor for data exfiltration and, common insider threats?
I think they have a place. I think, there's beyond data, there's tool sprawl. So there are lots of tools out there that do all sorts of things. I could probably conjure up my own script in a day or so to do some of the same tasks. But yeah, I think, there's definitely a need to understand, intrusion or threat detection in the environment. So yeah, you certainly want to consider looking at those types of tools as well.
I'm a behavior anomaly guy. I think that is a powerful tool. I usually like it involved in another tool, like the tools do it, not just behavior
Right.
analysis. There are some that just do that, but I like it but I want to know, again, on my two pillars, if somebody in identity X is now acting as identity Y to get to data that they don't normally get to, I want to know about that in real time. And I want to put stops in place for that. Because, it could be an insider threat, or it could be somebody that's just social engineered and that the bad actor's taken over their persona, right? So, those kind of things I want to know about, right away from that. And again, if downsizing, you've given somebody a notice and all of a sudden you see, gigs of data removing from there from, I want to know about that, as well, right?
Yep, absolutely.
What do you think is the most underlying security tool or practice today? That's a hard one.
Training, which is an interesting response.
Yeah, I like that.
People,
Yeah.
people are the I sometimes say people are the problem, not in a bad way, but just we're human. We're prone to error, and a lot of these attacks and a lot of these issues that come about, sometimes they're due to social engineering attacks that come across. So it's making users more aware and training them on good security hygiene, if you will.
Yeah, and then just not storing everything, on an endpoint, like or even in Outlook. Oh, I can't delete that email from, 2015. I might need it again someday. Just understanding that stuff and understanding simple things, right? Like that. You're just really keeping yourself, vulnerable on that. If you could implement one security measure in every company overnight, what would it be?
This may be unpopular, but zero trust.
Yeah.
You can trust nobody, or you should not automatically trust everything. So if I could implement zero trust in every organization, I think everyone would be better off.
I agree with that. And I agree because again, we've had this discussion and I hope folks listening understand this too, is I think zero trust got a bad rap early on. I think it was ahead of its time. Gartner really was onto something. The technology wasn't able to do the zero trust. So I understand the concept and then that technology at the time, but the technology can today.
Right.
And it is a lot more straightforward to implement it. Again, with the identity, having single sign-on, guardrails around that single sign-on, app whitelisting, data security, encryption, understanding who has access to the data and then controlling it with DSPM or data classification. Foundation of zero trust is where we just got that right there. And now we proliferate out from there based on, what the use cases are, right? I have one customer that, there's no office, everything is remote. So we went with, a private access solution, a secure edge. Everybody gets into the edge. And then any app that's whitelisted, they get. Anything that's not, they don't get. And end of story.
Right.
They haven't had an issue in years as far as, getting data stolen or an endpoint getting locked out. I would say back to your point, they are pretty security aware. They've done a lot of security awareness training,
Excellent.
focused on identity and data security. As we wrap up, last thoughts. What do you have to share?
No, I would say, data is exciting. I've always been a data nerd, if you will. I've always cared about data, particularly unstructured data has always been my one of the things I'm very interested in. But seeing how, companies are securing that data in very, trend-setting ways, and it just raising the level of sophistication for against attacks that are out there is fun to watch.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I do like your evangelist statement. As we wrap up, where can folks find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Carlos Moreira. I'm an enterprise architect, and again, I think in my bio it says cloud therapist. So feel free to follow or connect with me on LinkedIn. Yeah.
I would say that is true in the cloud therapist because I've heard you always, talking back. When I first heard you say that, I'm like, huh, that's kind of cool. But then really walking customers through their cloud journey is kind of cool. So I was like, he really is doing that. And, it's not one of those things. Yeah, we can get you to the cloud. No, it's like, what are you trying to do and really understand what they have in place today, and then making the story easy for them to get to where they want to be. It's great. I love the way that you do that because I think it makes folks feel less, overwhelmed with all of the
Right.
things that are on there. As we wrap up, a couple of things here. Let's see. You know, this coffee chat, happens every month. We have different topics and different guests on there. Carlos, so much great having you here.
Thank you
I
for
could
having me.
talk about data security and all that stuff all day long. But yeah, folks, feel free to look at our YouTube channel. We're doing more of these. There's going to be more video snippets that are up there, all about things like zero trust, things about data security, things that matter to you. We're doing some stuff now coming out with AI and the different AI stuff. There's going to be some stuff on ethics and AI, AI for good, bad, getting sensitive data under control in AI is one of the things we're working on. I think those are all, big things that are coming down, the road from there. So, thanks everybody for joining today. I've had a great time talking. Thanks for the questions. We've had some amazing questions this month from there, and I'll turn it back to you, Kristen.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Carlos. That was such a good conversation. Carlos, don't worry, we won't judge you for being a tea drinker. All are welcome. But thank you all for taking the time to join us this morning and coming up with some great questions as well for our hosts. I'll be sending along a follow-up email after the call, and that will include a recording of today's session. And again, as Rick said, you can also find our whole series on our YouTube channel as well. If you do think of any questions as we conclude, just let me know, send them over to me, and I'll get those to Rick and Carlos. Thank you again for joining us, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. All right. Thank you.
Take care.